It's about time I swap out this old office chair for a rocking chair. Because I feel like some cranky senile grandpa giving you the same damn story on a weekly basis.
Those damn Antifa punks are on my lawn again.
I admit it's repetitive, but I hope you understand why I care about this issue so much. I care because everything about this social struggle is at the heart of what matters to me most: protecting free speech. And not just legally, but culturally. Protecting your right and mine to go to a public place and discuss whatever ideas are in our heads, whether they're genius or gibberish, because that is how we separate what is genius from what's gibberish and ultimately advance as a society. So as long as there's a weekly violent masked parade of degeneracy threatening that process and a mass media that hesitates to unmask them for the basement dwellers that they are, it is crucial that we all keep talking about this issue, and there's evidence that it's actually working. There's some tune changing in the media this week, a bit more of a critical eye, dare I say honesty, being applied to Antifa after this weekend, and whether it's by goodwill or necessity, I'll take it. The circumstances lead me to believe it's by necessity for a couple reasons. First, if you consumed nothing but mainstream media, you'd probably believe the violence in Charlottesville was a unique event perpetrated by those terrible, terrible Nazis. They can be terrible, terrible Nazis, but Charlottesville was not a unique event, at least in terms of political violence. It is one data point within a trend, and so you end up in an interesting bind if you present Charlottesville as something special, but then the trend continues each weekend thereafter, even when you subtract those terrible, terrible Nazis from the equation. There was a free speech rally in Boston, nary a Nazi in sight, but the police were still hit with bottles of piss.
We did have some bottles thrown at our offices that did have urine in it.
There was an equal sum of 0 Nazis in Berkeley this weekend, yet no corresponding drop in violence. If you stoke outrage over violence and blame the Nazis, yet the violence continues when the Nazis are gone, you have no conclusion available other than there must be some other violent thugs around. There must be another side, that mythical other side for which you've been earnestly searching.
He said on many sides. Name those sides. What are the sides?
So the search is over, but what the search found in Berkeley this weekend is very difficult to sugarcoat. There's no way to spin who's responsible for the violence and maintain any sort of credibility, which is another plausible and probably more realistic reason why we're seeing the shift in coverage. But first, let's look at what actually happened. Sunday's planned event at Civic Center Park in Berkeley was called the Say No to Marxism rally, or the No Marxism in Berkeley rally. The primary organizer of which was Amber Cummings, a transgender woman who has repeatedly denounced racism.
Nothing to do with Charlottesville. That is absolutely ridiculous that we're being deemed that we have something to do with the abhorrent things that went on there. I do not support white supremacy. White supremacy is not allowed at my rally. We do not want racist people there. We do not want hateful people there. We also do not want violent people there.
Also in attendance was Joey Gibson, the leader of the conservative advocacy group Patriot Prayer, who organized an event in San Francisco the day prior, and who has also repeatedly denounced racism. Despite the explicit disavowals and condemnations and rejections of racism, the event was threatened by the notorious Bay Area anti-fascist group By Any Means Necessary, or BAM, and thus the event was formally canceled due to safety concerns, though Cummings said she alone would attend to make her points against Marxism and political violence by herself. Only a handful of conservative activists attended the event in Berkeley, including Cummings herself. But as we've seen previously, Antifa has no concept of proportionality in its responses. By around noon, the Black Bloc appeared in large numbers, fronted by a sign that read, "Avenge Charlottesville, protect your community," as though anyone in attendance had anything to do with Charlottesville, as though anyone in attendance defends what happened in Charlottesville, as though the organizers and attendees hadn't explicitly condemned what happened in Charlottesville. But that's the trouble with the Antifa worldview. Gender may not be binary, but Nazism surely is. You're either a comrade or a genocidal maniac. That's the only distinction Antifa makes, and it's a distinction they maintain by force. Antifa members began chasing event organizers and attendees out of the park, including Joey Gibson, who was hit and pepper sprayed despite offering no resistance. It was so bad the police had to fake arrest Gibson and his bodyguard as a means to rescue them from Antifa thugs.
A short time later, officers put Gibson and that second man in handcuffs, but police tell the Chronicle that this was actually a rescue. They were trying to protect the two men from the group that was pursuing them. Neither man was arrested or charged.
There's footage of a father and son being stalked and attacked, and they don't even understand why.
What are you guys beating us up for? He's crazy. Get the fuck out
There's footage of media members being harassed and assaulted. And where previously we've seen some fair fights in terms of numbers, in this case, there's no shortage of gang violence, sometimes dozens on one. Note the no hate shields apparently being unironically used as weapons. And check out this guy still pushing after peace has been restored. He's wearing a Ron Paul End the Fed t-shirt with his Antifa mask, promoting liberty through force, apparently. Though I guess it's no more of a paradox than being a fascist anti-fascist anyway. Or just wearing a ski mask on a hot summer day in general. Doesn't that get sweaty? There's an additional clip of what these assaults look like from the sky. A guy just trying to escape, not putting up a fight, and swarmed and beaten anyway. And all of this enabled predictably by the long-standing Berkeley tradition of ordering police to stand down. Police Chief Andrew Greenwood said, quote, "The potential use of force became very problematic given the thousands of peaceful protesters in the park. Once anarchists arrived, it was clear there would not be dueling protests between left and right, so he ordered his officers out of the park and allowed the anarchists to march in. There was, quote, no need for a confrontation over a grass patch," Greenwood said. Protecting territory is one part of police responsibility, sure, but protecting people is another, and one that's more important. Maybe holding specific ground isn't worth police confrontation, but what about protecting the constitutional rights of non-violent citizens under attack? I can't think of anything more worthy of police confrontation. The sum of this entire shameful display is a total void of excuses left for Antifa. No neo-Nazis showed up, the police took a non-interventionist approach, the demonstrators themselves put up zero fight against Antifa, and yet the violence remained the same. Arguably it worsened, but it definitely didn't improve. When all other explanatory factors for violence have been eliminated, eventually there is only one left. And the silver lining in this story is that media outlets are finally, after months and years of ignoring and minimizing Antifa's violent behavior, these media outlets are finally starting to be honest about it. Local news blamed Antifa.
Well, Daw, from what you did see, and if you can answer this, which groups would you say were most responsible for the violence today?
Some folks would argue that the Trump supporters simply by coming here incited the violence, invited the violence. But I can tell you from the counter-protester side, there were certainly a small number of instigators. They did not want to hear anything that the Trump supporters wanted to say. They just wanted them out. But then once you had the anarchists, the folks who were dressed in all black, there were about 100 of them. You can call them anarchists, you can call them Antifas or black bloc people. They were dressed up, covered up, and they were up to no good. I can tell you they were simply here looking for a fight.
Another local reporter on scene, a man who grew up in Berkeley, described on Facebook how he experienced hate on Sunday, ironically from people chanting "no hate." He described in detail how he was harassed and targeted for taking photos, that he doesn't support extremists, and that hate is hate from any side. Morning Joe on MSNBC blamed Antifa.
This is an ongoing problem in Berkeley especially, where members of the far left are using violence to shut down free speech and there to shut down demonstrators.
The Washington Post surprised many, myself included, on Monday morning, running the headline, "Black-clad Antifa members attack peaceful right-wing demonstrators in Berkeley." Even Slate noted Antifa were the attackers in Berkeley, though they go to great lengths to distance the violent ones from the rest of the rally counter-protesters, a gesture of generosity they would never extend in the case of Charlottesville. But hey, Rome wasn't built in a day. And constructing a credible, honest media from its current state, well, that's a much tougher task. So I'll take what I can get. And I'll take what I can get because as much disdain as I have for the shoddy coverage of Antifa in the recent past, proper coverage is an essential ingredient to getting Antifa's violent tactics minimized or stopped. I care more about stopping this nonsense than I do about being right. A lot of factors converge to create what we saw on Sunday. We've had months of insisting that large segments of society are Nazis, and therefore violence against them is acceptable. We have a particularly peculiar police force in Berkeley that always seems to say that stopping violence isn't part of their job description, but we've also had a media unwilling to apply the scrutiny this group deserves. The best way to remove the mask is to shine some critical light upon it, and I'll take that critical light applied late rather than never. Although maybe not. Like any cliche, that's not always true. If you show up to your job late enough times, your boss probably decides that never is in fact the better alternative. So I guess it's plenty reasonable to say that most media has showed up to its job late enough times on this issue that maybe the better approach is never to welcome them back. But I guess it doesn't really matter. It's not like I'm going to read or watch that crap anyway. But I do thank you, as always, for listening to this crap. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it.